Okay, I would like to formally welcome you all here. It's really, really nice to look around and see, because I know you all just about. I know most of you anyway. It's really, really, it's fun. This is like a big family gathering or something like that. I know you and you know me, you know, so. Anyway, I want to just tell you that I'm really, really glad you're here, and that I really feel that we're going to get a lot out of this class. And when I say we, I mean we, me too, believe me, because as you all know, in sharing and giving, one receives. So I'm very aware of that, and I'm really grateful to each and every one of you, because, you know, when you show up for a class like this, you're really demonstrating a certain responsibility, I think, a certain responsibility. That responsibility is not only to yourself, but also to the human race, the planet, everybody. Because, you know, every time that we go out of our way, every time that we rearrange our schedule so that we can learn something, so that we can improve ourselves in any way, that is not only an investment, you all know that, but it's actually a very powerful statement. It's a very powerful move that you can make, that we all can make. And the beautiful thing about it is that it benefits everybody. That's the power of it. In this course, as we begin to go into cosmic law and some of the other topics that we are going to cover, you're going to be seeing, I really want to bring that home to you, how when one knows the law, how that empowers you. Knowledge is power, you know, we've all heard that said. How true, how powerfully true. So I hope to demonstrate that, I hope to prove that to you as the course goes on. You know, I'm reminded of a story. I was directed, by the way, in preparation for this class, to look into the Bible. In fact, tonight I'm going to read a very short passage to you, don't worry, from the Bible, okay? So, but I'm reminded of the story that is told in the Bible, the Old Testament, and it has to do with that terrible, terrible place called Sodom and Gomorrah. Anybody heard of it? Mm-hmm. Maybe some of you were there. You never know. You don't have to raise your hands, but you know who you are. Well, anyway, just to really kind of briefly run it down to you, Sodom and Gomorrah were actually these two towns. It wasn't one. Most people think it's one town. It was two towns, two different cities, which apparently, for whatever reason, the souls there were learning lessons having to do with sensuality. Some people will call it hedonism. In other words, they were very much into the flesh, probably to the neglect of the spirit is what one gets when you read a little bit about what was going on. It's a long story. It's in the Bible. You could find it. We're told that there's a man in town called Lot. Lot was, like they say, a man of God, a holy man, obviously one who had kept his balance, had kept his sense of integrity, his sense of power, connected with, you know, the spiritual force. And it is said that God spoke to Lot and said, I'm going to destroy this city. Therefore, leave. Take your family and leave. Well, as some of you may know the story, Lot was shocked. You know, what? My town's going to go? What is this, you know? And he starts bargaining with God. You know, it's kind of funny. Wait, you know, hold on. He said, if I can find, I think it was 40 righteous men, will you please spare the city? And I believe the Lord said, you know, thundering voice, yes, Lot, you know, I will spare the city. So he went out and looked all over. Well, guess what? He couldn't find the 40 righteous men. So he comes back and, you know, he has to bargain some more. Okay, how about 30, you know? And God, yes, Lot, fine. If you can find 30 righteous men in this whole place, I will spare this place. I will not, you know, destroy it. So, fine, couldn't find them. I think it got down to 10. Lot's here bargaining, you know, God, please, you know. And God said, okay, 10 righteous men, we will spare the city. Well, of course, he couldn't find them. So God said, look, Lot, pack your bags and go. What did I tell you, you know? I know what I'm doing. And Lot took off. He packed his things. He went on, took his wife, Sarah. They went. He was told not to look back. Some of you may recall. Sarah looked back. And she was turned into a pillar of salt on the spot. I don't think Lot turned around to look at her, but you know, he probably said, sorry, Sarah. You shouldn't have looked. And he just kept on going. Well, the only reason I'm bringing that up is because, interestingly enough, when one knows a little more about cosmic law, you understand that story from a whole different perspective. Simply because there was a great imbalance there. There was a great imbalance, you see. In every culture, there have to be a certain amount, and I understand it to be a certain percentage of souls who are holding a certain amount of light, what we would call light. And what is light but enlightenment and the tendency to seek enlightenment? That's called light. As opposed to darkness, which is the tendency to withhold light or withhold information or withhold anything that would benefit the people involved, you see. So the reason I mention it is because I'm applying that to you all here, right now. What I'm trying to share with you is the fact that in that you have decided to be here, rearrange your schedules, and set aside a few nights to see what you can learn, you are in fact doing a great service, not only for Honolulu, not only for Hawaii, but for the whole planet. There's a direct correlation. There really, really is. You know, so I really want you to know that, you know, to your own empowerment, because I'm going to say knowledge is power many, many times, you know, during the course of this, because I really want to impress that upon you all. Okay, which of course brings us to cosmic laws. We're going to cover cosmic laws. There are more than one. We're going to cover clairaudience, as I mentioned, and trance states. These are but three, and there's going to be other things that I'm going to be dropping in as we go, but those are going to be probably three of the main topics that we are going to be covering while we're here. Some of you have asked, what week will you cover what? Logical question. Sorry, I have to make it a little more difficult for you. I haven't quite designed it that way. It's rather set up where over the course of the 4 weeks I will cover those things again and again. That's really the way we're going to do it. I hope to get into a deeper understanding of all of these things as we go. Okay, so that's the way I have to answer that. So if you have friends or anyone else has asked about it, that's what I'll have to tell you, that every week I'm going to be covering some of the same topics. I trust I won't get redundant. I trust I won't repeat myself. If I do, tell me so at the break. Okay? But that's what we want to do. Okay, every class, every single week, we're going to have also, the classes I think are going to go fairly the same. The first hour, we will be covering probably cosmic law or whatever we're doing then. We're going to have then a short break. I'll always break pretty much on the hour, and then we will come back and continue. In these classes, I am very much interested in having a question and answer period, probably at the end of each one, because I really want to encourage you to ask anything and everything you like. Even though I am up here sharing with you what I know about cosmic law, about these things, when it comes to cosmic laws, because these have been gleaned from so many different sources, you see, that's what I've really done. In a sense, what I've done, I've compiled what took me, 25 years to find out. Over the course of study, over the course of research, reading a whole lot of books, attending all kinds of classes, taking all kinds of courses, you know, prolonged ones at times. And I found out about these cosmic laws, which is what, you know, we're doing here. So we're going to be doing that, and we're also going to be breaking up into groups at one point. Not tonight. Tonight's about the only exception. We probably won't be doing any group work. But we are going to be breaking up into groups. Another thing we're going to be doing is every single week we'll have at least one meditation. Now, when I say that, what I'm referring to is not necessarily a quiet meditation, not the kind where you would just go within and we're all silent for 10, 15 minutes. It won't be quite that. That, you know, of course, is a beautiful thing. This is not a substitute for that, and that's something you want to do, you know, in your own time, of course. But we're going to do meditations in which I'm going to, with the help of Akihiro's music, we're going to have you try to experience the things that we're talking about. Because that's important, you know. I mean, it's one thing to hear it intellectually, but it really takes it deep when you can sit there with it and feel it in your inner parts, in your heart, in your soul. That's really what I want to do. And we will be doing that tonight, by the way. So that's kind of the general outline of how we're going to go with this, you know, from week to week to week as we progress. Okay. Okay. One of the goals of this particular class, and I think of pretty much any class, is a form of thought transference. And here's what I mean by that. Here I am in front of you claiming that for the last 20-some years I have studied cosmic law, I have read on these things, and that's why I have the nerve to stand up here and act like I know what I'm talking about, okay? I totally admit from the beginning I myself am totally a student of cosmic law, as I am of all of the things that I share with you. So I'm not going to in any way claim to be an authority on any of this or an expert, but I've learned that at some point you just kind of dive in and do it. You know, you really do. If you wait till you know it all, or you wait till you're perfect, you never get there. It doesn't work like that. I don't think so. So when you take any kind of a course, I think what's happening is that the teacher, or he or she who stands in the teacher role, is in a position to not only share with you verbally words, but also to share with you thought forms. For instance, if I go into a study of cosmic law and I start talking about, for instance, the law of invocation, what I hope to do is pass to you my understanding of that law in picture form as well as words. This is something most people cannot see physically, but you all can see it spiritually. You all can see it psychically. And that's what you get. And that's supposedly what makes so-called a good teacher. By the same token, if someone speaks to you about something that they don't, you know, we've all heard someone, as they say, talking out their head. You know, you've all heard someone start talking about something, and at one point you're going, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. You know, they just don't. Why is that? Because even though they may be saying the words, they don't have the accompanying understanding to send your way. See, that's what's happening. You're not getting it up here. You're not getting the thought transference. You're not getting the pictures, the real stuff, the essence. We're not getting that. You're just hearing words, and it's ringing hollow. It's like, that doesn't mean anything. You know, so what I want to say is, when I say that, in a way I'm kind of tipping you off. You see, I'm kind of alerting you that that is indeed what's happening, that I am consciously projecting pictures, my understanding and so on to you, so that you have a good sense of what I'm talking about, you know, beyond just words, okay? That's really a lot of it. We want to, you know, get that real clear so that you know, are comfortable with that. Now, you probably know a lawyer or two. Most of you here. Some of you might be lawyers in here. I'm sure you've all had cause to talk to one or two in your long, sweet lives. You know, but an attorney, a lawyer, supposedly, is somebody who knows the law. Well, if you know any lawyers personally, besides, you know, over the desk, you know, when you're handing over a large check, or maybe receiving one, you never know. But if you know any lawyers personally, most of you will know that lawyers, because they know the law so well, know exactly what they can do and what they can't do. You might even say they know what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. The average person wouldn't dare do certain things, but a lawyer will get right in there and do it. Why? Because they know the law. They know how far to go. They know what they can be prosecuted for, all of it. And they might know that little glitch, that little clause, that little loophole that's going to get them out of something that the average person, not knowing it, would never dare to do. Wouldn't, you know. Well, one of the goals that I have in this course is to share with you this understanding of cosmic laws so that all of us here can get to be better cosmic lawyers. Okay? I'm telling you up front. I find that from time to time, will do things that most people maybe wouldn't dare to do at times, and it's not because I'm just so bold. I happen to know certain things about the law that would enable me to do this or do that with what would seem to be impunity. Okay, that's the thing. We've all seen magicians and all these people, you know, who do all these incredible things, and you think, well, God, you know, aren't they afraid that this and that's going to happen to them, that this karma is going to come back to them? Haven't you wondered about that? I have. What about people who do black magic? Now, I'm not saying that it's not going to come back to them. I'm not saying that at all. By the law of cause and effect, our first cosmic law, it will return to them. There's no question about it. But, you know, they may know subtleties of the law. They may know what they're dealing with, the kind of energy. They may know where they're sending it and to whom and under what phase of the moon and under what astrological number. They'll know a lot of things where they will do something that, you know, they come out smelling like a rose. Now, some people know this intuitively from past lives, having never studied it in this life. And these are those people who seem to lead charmed lives sometimes, you know. They just see, like the daredevils and people like that. They just seem to, you know, go in and out of places you and I wouldn't even think of going into, and they come right out of it unscathed. How is that? They obviously know something we don't know, right? Isn't that true? So I think this is one of my goals, is that as we get into the cosmic laws and I'm going over them, and for instance, like the law of cause and effect, I'm probably going to talk about that every single week. So as I go into it, you know, I want to give different angles of it as much as I can. Let's talk about karma just for a moment. Because cause and effect usually is interpreted as karma. That's one of the names of it, isn't it? Cause and effect, karma, that's one of the terms of it. When one speaks about karma, one usually thinks in terms of what I do will come back to me. In essence, that is so. What does the law state specifically? But that for every action, there is a equal and opposite reaction, right? That's the basic law of cause and effect, okay? But how do we apply that with karma now? How does that work with karma? You know, I have a friend who was always looking for rules of thumb and little, you know, shortcuts, basically, for everything. And he one day came up with this brilliant idea, Aquarius, came up with this wonderful idea, and he said, you know what I do? He goes, whenever I'm contemplating something and it's a little questionable karmically, I ask myself, how am I going to feel when this comes back to me? Good question, isn't it? I think it's great. Because when you think about it, that kind of covers it. That really kind of covers it, doesn't it? Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm in a bank. The tellers are talking, not so much to the customers, but amongst each other, right? And there's a long line of people. I feel this isn't right, so I want to do something to speed it up, right? I know cosmic laws. I know what I can do. So I might sit there and focus on one of the tellers and start sending her a strong thought like, you're under observation by your boss right now. You need to do a real good job. And send that very clearly to her. Some of you might think, oh, that's a lie, or that's wrong, or you're threatening her, or something. Maybe. But I'm questioning, how am I going to feel when that comes back to me? If I should be doing my job, and I'm distracted talking with somebody, and I'm wasting someone's time, I want someone to do that to me. I'm not going to mind that. Or I deserve it, one of the two. Either way, you want to go with it. But you see what I'm saying? So I found that rule of thumb really, really works. It does. Now, I'm not saying that to encourage, you know, things you may have in mind, but you should think about that. How are you going to feel when this comes back to you? Because you can count on the fact that it will. Sooner or later, it will come back to you within the law of cycles, which, by the way, is directly tied in with astrology. I'm not going to get into astrology here this night. Some of you know that I have a fondness for it. But there is what they call the law of cycles, and there are definite cycles for things to happen. When we sow, we do not reap immediately, right? Normally, you sow, there's a period of time, and then you reap. There are certain astrological, let's call them times or cycles or transits, when in fact it would appear as if you are reaping. It's a reaping cycle. Possibly a very positive reaping cycle. Sometimes not so positive reaping cycle. If you spoke with someone who knows something about astrology, they will tell you precisely what those transits are. It's not that difficult to find out. You know, they're there. But it's kind of interesting to know that when we put forth good energy, it will return to us, not always immediately, right? And that falls into the law of cycles. I want to stay there with the law of cause and effect, because I want to kind of stay concentrated on what we're talking about, and then we'll progress to other laws and things. I recall studying with a metaphysical group of people some years back, one of the first ones I ever met. I must have been maybe 16 or 17. And I looked up to these people, mostly ladies, as my teachers, and in some ways I still do. But I recall revisiting them like years later. I went back, you know, old home week, just to see what's up. And one of them claimed she had, I think, a headache or something. And another lady in the group just very thoughtlessly said, "Oh, Jean, we all know that you probably, you know, bludgeoned somebody to death in the last life, and that's why you have your headaches. So just, you know, put up with it." I was shocked. I mean, here were these people who I thought were my teachers, had been at one point. I can imagine it. I mean, you talk about no compassion. But beyond that, that was a very I think, a shallow view of the law of karma. You cannot conclude that just because something happens to someone, that they did that to somebody else. That may be true. We all know that. That may be true. That is an aspect of the law of cause and effect, but it is not the end-all and be-all of that law. So, I mean, it's very dangerous. You know, that's why I think they said judge not, because you don't know. You don't know. One would, I think, have to be almost omniscient, meaning all-knowing, to really be in a position to know why it was that any given situation was happening to somebody, especially of a negative thing, you know, because there's all kinds of incredible intricacies with the law of cause and effect, the law of karma, all kinds of them. You have no idea. To the point of where you have your gurus in India who know the law so well, they appear to take on karma of other people. Are you going to say because this guru suddenly develops a liver disease and dies that, what, he was an alcoholic in his last life or something? Probably not. He could be doing a very spiritual and noble thing, you know. So you know, that's just a little common sense thing, that when you see something happening to someone, especially if it's of a negative or painful thing, generally the first thing to do is have compassion. You know, realize, hey, how would I feel if I were in that position? I wouldn't want someone thinking even, or as much as saying to me, well, you deserve it because you probably did that to somebody else, so. You have it coming and you know it. No, we really can't do that. That doesn't work too well. So I think as we get into these things, I really hope that we can, shall I say, get to understand the intricacies of the law, so that we can get more, you know, akamai, we get more wise, we get more understanding about how these things work. The Bible again. Back to the Bible. I'm feeling so pious tonight. I have a Bible right here. I'm going to read some of it to you only for this reason. Because, you know, there have been many, many attempts by various religions and philosophies to somehow bring across cosmic law in various forms. What were the 10 Commandments? Right? They were laws, weren't they? Thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that. By the way, my guides, who I trust implicitly at this point, and who I love dearly, have said to me, you know, by the way, it wasn't like that. 10 Commandments didn't say thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that. They go, think about it. If the divine mind was going to make this incredible revelation to humanity, you think that the mind would have something better to say than all these things which you can't do? You can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And don't even think about doing that. Don't covet anything. Now, one can see the wisdom in the laws. I know some of you must be thinking, blasphemy, you know, who does he think he is, criticizing the 10 Commandments? I'm not. I'm simply saying I don't think that's how they were delivered. That's a personal opinion. Sorry, I can't prove it to you. But the guides have mentioned that, based on what they've observed in the Akashic records, that yes, indeed, the Lord God came forth and gave some guidance, perhaps, some guidelines, might be a good word, to Moses. But we are in doubt whether it was just a bunch of thou shalt nots, thou shalt nots, thou shalt nots, okay? But really, when you look back, like in the Old Testament, there's like an awful lot of, the Old Testament is like a book of statutes. It's like a book of laws. But, you know, I have to read this to you. I want you to notice what kind of laws are given. This is out of Deuteronomy, chapter 13. Now listen carefully. This was a law given supposedly to mimic or to represent or reflect cosmic law, I assume. I think that's what all laws are, you know, an attempt to do. Check this out. If thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thine own soul. Now, it's anybody, right? Close to you. Entice thee secretly, saying, let us go and serve other gods which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers. Now, if you take that literally, that means that if I come to you and say, hey, I'd like to turn you on to some Hindu gods, like Lord Ganesha, Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, these may not be the gods of you or your fathers, right? So I'm already in this category now, right? In fact, I think I've done that already a few times. namely of the gods of the people which are round about you, nigh unto you, or far off from thee, from one end of the earth even unto the other. Still qualifies, right? India. Thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him, neither shall thine eye pity him, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him. But thou shalt surely kill him. I'm glad we've changed. Right? I'd be eligible for this right now. Okay? But thou shalt surely kill him. Thine hand shall be the first upon him to put him to death. Allah. Right? You're being told to murder somebody. Just for talking about Lord Ganesha. And afterwards the hand of all the people. And thou shalt stone him with stones that he die, because he hath sought to trust thee away from the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Now, that's a law. Again, no doubt an attempt to reflect cosmic law, but what cosmic law are they reflecting? I don't know. I really don't know. So you see how these things, how they work. That's why we find that people who just put a lot of attention in the Bible and limit, their whole spiritual path and welfare, I would say, to the Bible itself, I think it's a real risky thing to do, because that just kind of doesn't work. I have found that in almost every major religion, they've attempted to come forth with some aspect of cosmic law. The Christian church, from the very beginning, began giving laws, didn't they? The Master Jesus gave laws, or at least he shared some. He was illustrating them, I think, in many cases. And I think people have taken what he said and they've built up this whole body of information around it. We all know about that. I have found that some of the best, and I will say most objective listing of the cosmic laws I've ever found are to be found, interestingly enough, in the Hindu religion. They speak openly about the law of karma and various other laws. That's one. Also, the Rosicrucian teachings. Some of you know who the Rosicrucians are. The Rosicrucians are a mystery school. They've existed for thousands of years. And when you really get into their studies, you find that they will also enumerate cosmic law. Also, the teachings of the Ascended Masters, the compiled teachings of the Ascended Masters. These are also compilations of cosmic law. These I personally found have been the most objective, meaning that they're not hooked into a religion or a political system which is trying to get you to do something or basically is trying to control you, whether out of fear or whatever. So I think if you care to seek out these laws yourself, you can look in some of those literatures, and I think that's what you'll find, that there's compilations. Now, another thing is this. In these various systems, they'll all give you a different number of cosmic laws. Some will say there are 33. Some will say there are 12. Some will say there are 22, I think. So there's all different kinds, okay? I've compiled the ones, frankly, that I remember. Okay, so might be like 18 or something. About 18, I think. And the interesting thing is that the laws are all woven one into the other. That's the interesting thing about them. They're really very much woven one into the other. And you'll find as I speak of one law, as we get more conversant with the laws, as I speak of one, you'll probably start thinking, oh, and that ties into this other law. And they do. They all kind of fit in. So that's kind of important to remember. Now, let us see. The law of cause and effect, by the way, I still want to finish up with that one. The law of cause and effect can also be looked at in this way. If we entered this world, if you entered this life long ago, whenever you took your first incarnation here, at neutral, let's say you are an earthling, which I don't see many of them here, but let's say you were one, okay, and you incarnated for the very first time on the planet Earth, on Terra, and you came in here at neutral as far as energy goes. You just came in blank ledger, blank slate, tabula rasa, neutral. But the goal is, after many, many incarnations and learning how to work with energy, learn everything you can in the earth plane, and then leave here with a positive, in the black, so to speak, as opposed to the red. Okay, well, obviously, you have to work with the game of life. You have to do that, right? So, as the guides have often said, some test tubes have to be broken and that kind of thing in the laboratory of life. Otherwise, you don't learn anything. So, one way to know whether or not you're in sync with the law of cause and effect is this. Do you feel like you're in a rut? if you feel like you're in a rut, if you feel like you're not going anywhere, if you feel like you're not progressing in any area, you need to look in terms of what is it that I'm not attempting? You know, how is it that I'm not working with the law of cause and effect? Where am I not experimenting that I should start feeling so, you know, like I'm in front of a block wall? That's often what you're looking at, you see. When, on the other hand, you have a sense of progress, you have a sense that things are going fairly well, or at least there's a sense of progression, even though it be painfully. And, you know, we all know sometimes it's pain and duress that cause us to grow the most. So if you have a sense of that, you can probably know that you're kind of in sync with the law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect. So, again, I'm going to be covering that law as we go along. I just wanted you to be aware of it and to give it some thought, because, you know, you'll find, even though we all know about karma and that kind of thing, you know, when we start thinking about it as objective, as like a lesson, something that we can really look at and even write down, then you'll find that you start noticing in life, and that's the goal of what we're doing here, so that this becomes practical knowledge, second nature to you, so that you're always aware of the fact the law of cause and effect is operative every single second. Every single second. Now, let's talk about, some of you here, I bet, work for commissions. Some of you must work for commissions, okay? Well, there's a commission side to the law of cause and effect. Whatever you're causing, you know, there's going to be an effect back, right? Okay, for instance, if I can successfully impart to you knowledge of cosmic law to the point of where you start to successfully integrate it into your day-to-day lives, which is my goal, my prayer, and my hope. Okay, if I can do that, even for half of you, then all of that good energy that you start generating, guess what? I get royalties. See? Return, exactly. Cause and effect, right? Why? Because I have done something. I've put a cause in motion. What is that cause? I have caused you to see things in a different light, hopefully a more enlightened light. You see? Therefore, all things that you do from that point on, guess what? Isn't that neat? Now, the opposite is also true, isn't it? If I somehow confuse you, and in that confusion or behind that confusion you go and make a mess, I pick up some of that karma as well. See? Why? Because I caused you to be worse off than you were before. That's why. You see? So can't you see how this blends then into what I will get into later down the road called the law of service, which is a law. You know, so you see how they start blending one into the other, and I'll kind of cover them as we go along. But the law of service is definitely connected here. So you see, this would impel one to want to do more service. It would also impel one to try and you know, it's like anything. You know, you can work hard or you can work easy, right? Well, if I can enlighten somebody, that's one of the easiest ways, really. Think about it. It's one of the easiest ways. If I can enlighten someone or help someone know a little bit more, then they, from that moment on, are better off, right? You see what I'm saying? So this is I think one of the most, what's the word, profitable? You know, exponentially, this is one of the most profitable ways of sending forth good energy, is in trying to do something that will improve a lot of people. So now you see why the so-called philanthropist in our society is such an important person, and why that's a very special role to take on. When one starts thinking in terms of, I'm not just here for myself, I'm not just here for my own little circle of friends. If I can do good for 1 million people, I'm going to get 1 million times all that kind of return. You see, so there's that element of that. There's that element of compensation. Okay, for some reason I want to stop right now, and this isn't going to be our full question and answer thing, but I would like to stop and open the door for any questions that there might be. Yes, Linda. She was talking about what some people are calling the New World Order. And the New World Order is like a plan to basically run genocide, get rid of a lot of seemingly or so-called undesirable peoples and hoard money and this kind of thing. So you've got all these people like at the top, right? You know, having the controlling interest over a lot of things, okay? So that's a good question, because she's saying, where's their karma? How is this working out, okay? That's a very good question. I think I can answer it. I will try, okay? I will give the best answer I can. And, you know, you all might get other answers that would just come to you. One of them is this. That would fall, and this will fall into the category of a couple of different laws. One of them, believe it or not, falls under the category of the law of free will. Okay, I'm not going to go fully into that law tonight, but I will say this much. The law of free will is something greatly misunderstood on earth. We are so conditioned to have so many rules and regulations to comply with, both professionally, politically, culturally, you name it. You don't realize it. We don't how. But the minute you hit spirit, the minute you're on the other side, one realizes, this is what I've been told by so many spirit people, how incredibly free the soul is. Every soul is absolutely free to do anything they want to do. Now, if one soul decides to, let's say, attack another soul, which in a sense is what they're doing, we could say. Okay, you heard that saying, it takes two to tango, right? What are we talking? Victim and victimizer. So, the people who are beginning to become aware of the fact that there are such beings, that there are such people who are controlling things, who value human life, at least ours, at zero, as we become aware of it, and as we begin to be incensed at this and say, what? Because, you know, when one is unaware, ignorance is no excuse. Let's say you go to another country and you don't know the law, and you end up breaking the law, and you end up in jail. You can't say, well, I didn't know. I mean, maybe the judge might be merciful, maybe not. The point is, you know, you could, by their laws, get taken right into jail and sent down the river. Or is it up the river? You know what I mean. Into the Hokie. And you won't get out. And so the thing is that what's happening with cosmic law is we're learning to become more responsible. That's the whole point of learning cosmic law. So you know the law. We have to know the law. So you know when you're in violation. So you know when you're liable. So you know when you're vulnerable. Okay, the black belt kung fu master walking down the street, he's not real liable to get attacked, is he? He's not consenting to that. So he's done everything in his power to see to it that he won't. He has actually trained himself in that way. You see what I'm saying? He's not going to get attacked. Well, highly unlikely. So in a sense, you see, as we're like children. All of us are like children. And as a race, I think we're going through this like a racial group initiation where we're learning as a race what we have been subjected to. We have been as lambs led to the slaughter, so to speak. But I think a lot of it has been due to ignorance. These forces have very cleverly controlled us. But can't you see, by doing it through the so-called democratic system, and I'm not here to talk politics, so please don't get into really a political rap with me out in the if you happen to be of a certain political persuasion. But point is, that most of us haven't been aware of what's been done. Why? Because we've been duped into thinking that we're voting these laws in. In fact, a lot of us have. A lot of us have. I think we have, pretty much everybody here, I get the feeling that I'm sure every one of you here has at least voted at least one time for one law that did not serve you because it was worded a certain way. Very clever. Very clever indeed. Now, can't you see, it is these forces, it's their free will to do that. It's our free will to accept it or to know better. So what we're doing is we're trying to transcend victimization. That's another thing about cosmic law. The more you know, the less you're going to be manipulated. Knowledge is power. That's the fourth thing. So, you know, I think this is what we're here about. I really think that's what we're all about. And that will carry on through from the grand political scheme down to your personal affairs. Down to your very personal affairs, where if you have, let's say, a cousin, a brother, a mother, a father, or anybody, like it said in the Bible, who is doing you wrong, who is misusing you, who is taking advantage of you, you'll start to realize that, I think, more and more, and start to say, wait a minute, I'm cooperating with this, aren't I? I'm allowing Mom to lay a guilt trip on me and make me go pick her up every Saturday and do things that I don't want to do of my own free will. Possibly I would if she weren't pressuring me. By the way, my sweet mother's in spirit, so I'm not talking about my mom. But I think you know what I mean. You know, we've all been there. We've all done that. I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. It's part of our growth. To be victimized. There's probably a whole lot of victims in this room. All these looks like me? I won't look around. But you know who you are. You know, so I think that's part of what this is. You know, it's unfortunate, you're right, it's true. And I do believe that as long as we tolerate this, we're playing a game with them. We're playing a little game with them. The minute that people start realizing it, and mind you, I'm not trying to start a big revolution, or am I? You know, but the minute that people realize that they no longer have to take that, and one by one, Richard came up with a real wonderful slogan having to do with the purpose of your spiritual center. And it talked about bringing enlightenment one heart at a time. That's how enlightenment happens, isn't it? Well, hopefully here it's a lot of hearts at a time, and that's wonderful. But ultimately it is each heart at a time. And I think that as we start to realize things that are happening politically, and some of us are more inclined that way than others, because you see, we have to remember now that there's priorities too. You and I may be free to explore that realm, but someone else may be, it can all that they can do just to keep going to work and paying rent, and they may not have either the time or inclination to study it. So in that we do it, we exponentially are affecting their consciousness. You know, so that's why each one of us is given a path to walk. And whatever your path is, and they say whatever your talent is, do it. Because in your talent, you're contributing to the talent of everybody. We all have roles to play. So that's a lot of what that's about. It goes into the law of free will, which I'd like to get into big time. And I will do that probably next week. Because I find that in personal relationships, this is one of the laws I see violated the most often, is the law of free will. Not out of viciousness, out of ignorance. You may be violating someone's free will and don't even know it. If you knew it, you probably wouldn't do it, you know? And or you may be violated yourself and don't know it. So that's what we're going for, is for you know it. You know what you're doing, you know what's being done to you, and basically you have this 360-degree consciousness where you're watching all the time. There is one of the great masters who I'm sure you all are very familiar with, especially those you wear in purple. His name is the Master Saint Germain. He's had many, many things quoted to him. Saint Germain said this, Saint Germain said that. I'm sure he said them all, you know. But one thing he supposedly has said is that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Don't lay down on the job. Keep your eyes open. That kind of thing. And the more one is aware, the more you can see people coming. And you're able to check them out very, very clearly. Okay, there's that. Okay, I'm going to cover one more cosmic law, and then I want to take a break. There'll always be a break in our classes, okay? This next law, I think, is a really important one. It's called the law of hierarchy. The law of hierarchy. What does it state? The law of hierarchy states, basically, that there's always going to be greater expressions, and there's always going to be lesser expressions. Some people are not comfortable with that. The ego can get in the way. Both ways. Because you see, if there's a greater expression and you acknowledge that, it almost implies with the law that there should be a sense of acknowledgement of that greater, or shall we say a sense of respect to that greater being. Some people don't like to do that. The ego gets in the way. No one's bigger than me. No one's greater than me. You know, that gets in the way. It also implies that if there's a law of hierarchy, that anyone who's so-called lesser in any given area, mind you, you would feel a certain sense of what the French call noblesse oblige. It means the nobility is obliged to help the common man. The law of hierarchy is very interesting because it very much comes into play in relationships. I'll give an example. Let's say there's I wonder if there's one here. Let's say there's a doctor who goes to a cosmic law workshop and starts jumping up and, you know, making comments. Don't try it if you're hearing it. Because I know the law. If that would occur, that person would be, we would say, a little askew of the law of hierarchy. Why? Because I know more about cosmic law than he does or she does. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it's a matter of knowing that in any given area, people are going to know more or less than you. So the law of hierarchy rather has you get appropriate. You basically what you do is, before we do or say anything, you check out the scenery. You see what's happening. If you walk into a room, you should be sensitive to that. You should walk in and see who's who. Who's running the show here? You know, that kind of thing. Okay, my friend Ezio, he runs a wonderful hair salon. Now, if I walk into his place and start telling him how to cut hair, which I would never do, believe me. You'll get your turn, Ezio. Anyway, I wouldn't do that. Why? Because I'd be a fool. I don't know anything about hair cutting, and I'm painfully aware of that. This man has been doing it all his life. So what happens is we learn to respect people in that which they are, quote, greater than we. It's real simple, really. How come a lot of people don't get it? I wonder, you know. The law of hierarchy also works, again, in an interpersonal situation. I think from this has come things like respect for elders. That's another thing. Why should we respect our elders? The Hawaiian word is kupuna. You probably know. Why should we respect our elders? That tradition is based on the law of hierarchy, in that one assumes that elders, having lived longer, are more knowledgeable about the law. Now we all know that there are old fools too. So, you know, and mind you, should you run into an old fool, you'll know it. And the law of hierarchy would stipulate that you do not have to necessarily, you know, defer to them just because they're older. I mean, in that they're showing that when it comes to just common sense, you've got it over them. You know, you see what I'm saying? The law of hierarchy basically asks that you just really check out the turf. You really check out the turf. Any new situation that you're moving into, we all know this. See, most of us do this quite naturally. Let's say you go into a new job. How many of you would jump up and start telling the boss what to do and blah, 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 this kind of thing? Most of you wouldn't. Most of you wouldn't. Now, speaking of bosses and things like that, now here comes a little aspect of the law of hierarchy that some of you might find a little bit hard to swallow. But I got to tell it to you because, now mind you, when I share these things, I'm sharing what I know, what I believe, not always what I do. So, you know, I'm admitting, huh? What, do as I say, not as I do. But the law would state that if you have a boss in a given job situation, that by hierarchy, you should, for the most part, be obedient to that person. You're in that situation by your free will. If that boss violates you or violates your sense of ethics, then by several other laws, you would probably want to extricate yourself from the situation. That would be the correct thing to do, the correct protocol to do, as opposed to sit there and hate the person or purposely sabotage them or purposely disobey or, you know, it's a good time when they're not looking, or, you know, any negative reaction, because that doesn't help you. See, law of cause and effect. You're sending something at them. How are you going to feel when that comes back to you? Probably not that good. I don't want someone sticking their tongue out behind my back, backbiting me, you know. I don't want that. So I'm going to not try and be in a situation where I'm going to do that to somebody, right? So you can see how in the law of hierarchy, you know, you are agreeing to be in a hierarchical situation if you walk in the door and say, I want to be hired in this place. Now, granted, you may not know what you're walking into. You know, we're not all prescient. But once you find out what the deal is, then, you know, you have a choice. See, then it falls back to the law of free will again. You are free. You are free to do something about it. And if you don't, and you just sit there and stew, or worse yet, project, then again, you are risking a negative return by the law of cause and effect. So you can, again, see how all these laws are interwoven. Lots of times I find it really helps just to run them down. That's really what my intention is in this whole series of classes. I'm just going to run the laws down. And in different angles, and I'm going to give you different examples, how you can know when you're in tune with the law, how you can know when you're not. I'm going to try and give as many, shall I say, rules of thumb or whatever as possible. Okay, so that's really what I'm into right here. I do want to read a short passage out of this book. It's called The Golden Scripts. This is a book that's channeled writings taken way back in the 20s and 30s from the Master Jesus. I found it to be very pure teaching as far as it resonates within my own soul. He's talking about the law of hierarchy. Now watch if you can see how he ties this in. He says here, man hath said there is no God. I say unto you, God in truth is thought incarnate. But in men's saying they have meant, there is no ruler unto whom we are accountable. In such saying their error hath been grievous, like big mistake. Truly, there are 20 million rulers unto whom they are accountable. 20 million? Hierarchs. Boom, 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 boom. For each species and kind hath its rulers unto whom it is accountable, whether on the plane of earth or in planets afar in decimal space. So, that's way out there, isn't it? He says here, what I tell you this hour is this. There is one God in respect that there is a ruler of the planetary systems. This ruler, I say, is an old, old spirit, older than any of us have knowledge. His comings and goings are marked by vast cataclysms, so that stars do perish and reassemble in his presence. Verily is he incarnate in the universe, as ye do know the universe of sight and sound. Meaning, if you think you have a body, the universe is his incarnation. How's that? Try that body on for size. Yet doth he dwell in presence upon a far, far planet, greater in extent than your minds can encompass. Behold, I do go unto him for instruction at intervals. A living entity, who hath so great a power that for him to speak is for creation to consummate. Now check this out. Gods hath he in turn beyond him, of similar structure, vastness, and incomprehensibility. For the universe, beloved, hath no end in majesty. That's the law of hierarchy. Whew. Isn't that beautiful? It just goes on and on and on and on. Greater and greater. Greater and greater are the hierarchs, are the beings to whom we are. See, I find that a very comforting realization. Some people don't like that. I guess, again, I think it's an ego trip. They don't want to know that there's somebody up there who can tell them what to do. But I find that very comforting. The thought that I, or frankly, no offense, but anybody in this room is the pinnacle of creation, I would be very frightened. Very frightened indeed. You know, it just doesn't work. So these great, great beings are basically our hierarchs, as it were. What about free will and destiny? Good question. How do they interrelate? Obviously, you hear people say that's your destiny, that's your fate, or you have free will. So what's the where's the meeting ground of the two? Well, destiny would seem to be something that one has had a hand in choosing at some point, right? For instance, let us say I am planning my incarnation. And you know that we plan our incarnations, I trust. Incarnations are not chaotic at all. They're definitely planned. I mean, we enter this life with an agenda. We enter this life with a roster of events. And like an itinerary that you might take to Europe, I'm going to spend 10 days in England and 10 days in Germany and 2 days in France. That's an itinerary. That is your plan. Your free will comes in because once you're in England, you may decide you don't want to spend 10 days there. So you can sometimes change that. Some things, though, you have chosen or predetermined, you will go through that and you won't allow yourself any out of it. That's a decision you can make in the prenatal state in the so-called spirit world. That is something like that. For instance, and usually, by the way, that has something to do with karma as well. It usually has to do with previous actions and previous decisions that have been made, usually in past lives. So destiny, free will, they kind of interact there. They kind of interact. For instance, you may have chosen and therefore destined yourself to marry a person who is of a different religious background than yourself. So that's your destiny, and that happens. You've chosen it. It becomes a subconscious program that you just kind of automatically follow, like it or not. You'll like it, though, because you're programmed to. See what I mean? So you've already hypnotized yourself to say, when I see this person, I'm going to fall madly in love. I won't notice that he's a boop, or that she's a boop, I won't notice that. All I'll see is the person of my dreams. And I'll just jump right up, and that's... See, and you'll call that your destiny because you have already kind of set that cause in motion. Now, once you hook up with that person, that's where your free will comes in. How are you going to handle the situation? Are you going to be miserable? Your choice. Are you going to make it a win-win situation? Your choice. You know, so see, that's where free will plays within destiny. It kind of works like that. Okay? Now, yes? Mm-hmm.
There are no mistakes, is that accurate?
Well, you know, it's kind of a matter of semantics, isn't it? It is really, because, you know, my guides have shared with me recently that there is no failure as such. That they said failure is an illusion, like death, appearing very, very real from the physical point of view, but not at all. It's an incredible growth experience, right? So when and what they call mistakes, what we call mistakes, they call miscalculations. A mistake. That's what they call it. They said, so in a way they have said there are no mistakes, there are miscalculations though. I may say I'm going to go do this, and then I make a mistake and don't do it. That was a miscalculation. Something I should not feel guilty about, by the way, but should see as, okay, now I know something I didn't know before, right? I thought, you know, that this and this and this would get me here. Well, it didn't. So I blew it. I'm wrong, right? And that's why the ego is important, not to have that rest. You can just sit there and go, hey. It's almost like being happy when you realize that something like that's happening, because now suddenly you're that much more, you know, in touch. Okay. I wanted to get into the subject of clairaudience simply because I feel personally that it's the most common psychic ability, possibly next to clairsentience, or what you would call intuition. And there are fine lines there, you know. You all know intuition. What's intuition? Intuition is knowing, isn't it? It's a knowing. Some systems of thought will correlate psychic abilities with certain psychic centers. They would say clairsentience, the sense of psychically sensing things, not necessarily hearing, not necessarily seeing, but just sensing. Clairsentience is often connected with what they call the solar plexus. You know, people say, I got a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. That's, of course, the solar plexus. We all know that. And you would come up then to the heart center, which would be the center of intuition, or intuition is connected with the heart center. People say, I know something. I just know it in my heart. I know she's innocent. I know it in my heart. That's intuition, you know. It's usually right. When you get up to the throat center, now you're talking clairaudience, psychic hearing. Psychic hearing. May I make it very plain right now? I am prepared to stand in front of God and the whole world and you all and sit here and tell you I am clairaudient. I am clairaudient, okay? And yet, in the same breath, I can say, but I very rarely actually hear voices in my ear. What? You just said you were clairaudient. What are you, schizophrenic? That too. No, I'm not schizophrenic, thank God, but I am clairaudient. And what I mean is that, and that's one of the things I really want to get across to you all. Tonight and every other night we're going to be talking about it. Because I want to convince you all that we're all clairaudient here. Every one of you is clairaudient. Every one of you is clairaudient here. There's not one exception. Not one, as I see it, as I define clairaudient. And I will now define that. I think half of you got to this class tonight through clairaudience. Half of you got told by somebody that you can't see that this would be a good thing to do. So you came to check it out. That's clairaudience. What is clairaudience? It's those messages that, like a cat that will shoot in front of your car when you're going this way, it will just come out of the blue. That is clairaudience. I'm going to try and define it and describe it in as many, many ways as I can and give as many examples as I can till I finally get it home to you that you are all clairaudient, because I just know you are. I know you are. There's not one in here that I believe has not had clairaudient experiences, like thousands of them. And you don't have them daily, if not hourly. A lot of you are having clairaudient experiences right this minute as I'm speaking. You're being reminded of times by your spirit friends who are reminding you of times when they talk to you through clairaudience, right? Didn't pick it up, huh? It's okay. The reason is because we're not taught. Don't be too hard on yourselves. We're not taught about these things, are we? You all know good and well. You could go through all kinds of schooling, you could have all kinds of degrees, all this kind of stuff, and never be taught a thing about clairaudience. In matter of fact, never even hear the word. Some of you know that I've worked a little bit with Richard's computer. In fact, I believe when I was writing this letter, the letter that I sent out, I used Richard's computer. And as I did it, of course, I wrote in the word clairaudience. Well, later we did a spelling check. What's this word? You know, doesn't know what the word clairaudience means. It's not even in its, you know, they never thought to put it in the dictionary. Of course not. I mean, it might be in the regular Webster's, but it's not in their little, you know, even if it has 10,000 words, clairaudience isn't in there. So clairaudience. Clairaudience is psychic hearing. There's all kinds of degrees of it. In September, by the way, I am very happy to bring through here a medium who lives in New Zealand. Her name is Phyllis Tantrum. This lady, I was in New Zealand about a year or so ago. I was invited to go there by these ladies, these mediums. They were very, very helpful. They were wonderful. They promoted me. Oh, you don't know. I mean, they treated me so very well. I hope to do for her a little bit of what she did for me. This particular lady, Phyllis Tantrum, she will be here on September the 4th, I believe. It's a Friday night. You know, you'll all get, you know, notices on this. And she'll be doing a demonstration. Her daughter, by the way, I just found out, is also, well, I met her daughter and has developed some mediumship since I've been there and is going to be with her. So we'll have a mother-daughter team doing clairaudience. But anyway, if you've ever seen myself or any medium do what's called a message service, almost always it will be done almost entirely through clairaudience. What is that? You'll just walk around, you'll look around, and you'll be drawn to somebody, and suddenly you start getting information about them. It doesn't seem to come from your gut. It's not so much clairsentience. I'm not trying to like feel them. And it doesn't come from my heart all the time, but somewhat. I seem to be, the impression I get is someone's telling me. Someone is telling me things about this person. I do it all the time in readings. I sit there every single day and do readings, and I am told things constantly. It just happens every single day of my life. Every hour, I could pretty much say. And you too. That's the thing. I mean, I'm not trying to say I am and you're not. Au contraire. We all are. So the reason I brought up Phyllis Tantrum, you'll see, when I said there are degrees of clairaudience, she's one of the best message mediums I've ever seen. This woman comes up with the most specific information. She'll just blow you away. Very good. You also, many of you saw Robert Ireland do the blindfold billet. He's also very clairaudient by degree. He gets names, he gets specific information. That's clairaudience by degree. It's a degree, a very high degree of clairaudience. I've seen some very good mediums, good platform mediums, and they're all clairaudient. And we are all clairaudient. That's the thing. I'm going to start giving just a few examples real quick. Okay, this is one I've used many times, but it fits. You're walking out the door. You don't have your keys in your pocket. Suddenly, oh, my keys, and you catch the door right before it locks, okay? In many cases, I would say that was a clairaudient communique. And you'll go, oh, I'm so glad I remembered, you know? Patting yourself on the back. You didn't remember. That's just it. That's the point. You didn't. You were reminded. That kind of thing. Today, I had my ringer on my phone, which I turn off during readings. I had the ringer off, but I had turned my message machine off as well, which means that if anyone had called me, I wouldn't know it. The machine wouldn't take the message, and I wouldn't even hear it ring. So it would just sit there, and a little light would go. But you couldn't hear anything. You couldn't hear a sound, right? And I was expecting, by the way, someone to come up within minutes. Suddenly, out of the blue, I was told by one of my guides, ringer's off. It was as clear as day. Oh, thank you. So I went and turned the ringer on. Thank you, clairaudience. You see, that kind of thing. Those kinds of inputs that come out of the blue, that come to you at any given moment of the day or the night, clairaudience. Now again, if we try and cram it into something where we want to hear things, it may not work. It may not work. You may not hear. As I told you, I'm clairaudient, but I don't hear voices really in my ear, like my voice right now talking to you. I rarely hear that. I have, but I rarely hear that. I'm sure many of you here have had the experience of being asleep or almost going to go to sleep and you hear your name called. Has that ever happened to anybody here? A lot of people. Huh? I mean, you hear your name as clear as day. Someone will call your name. Linda! You hear it. Half the time, they don't say anything else after that. So, you know what I mean? It happens. Doesn't that happen? Did they say anything after that? No, they never do. They just call your name and that's it. They leave you wondering for the rest of your life. Did I miss something? They're about to tell me the secret of life. And never. What's it? Yeah, they probably do. They must, you know. I just know that they don't. I've yet to hear Arthur and, yes, and hear anything after. Never. They just, get the feeling they have a good time waking you up. But so on rare occasions I have heard that clearly, but rarely. So I'm just saying this because most people say, I don't hear anything. Yes, you do. I insist that you do. You're clairaudient whether you like it or not. We are all clairaudient here. No, really. We really are. And I thought it would be a real good idea. Wrong. I stand corrected. I stand corrected. I was about to say, I thought it would be, no, I didn't think. I was told. See, right on the spot. This just happened right this very second. I was just told that what I had thought was my idea, as usual, isn't. There's going to take credit for it. You do it all the time. Why can't I? You always take credit for all the clairaudient things you're told. You think you're so smart, don't you? You're so brilliant. I think I said that to this. I said, I'm so brilliant. I got this wonderful idea. Well, it was given to me. Now, some of you might think, well, can I ever have an original thought of my own? Am I constantly being led by the nose or told every little thing? Obviously, you can and you do. Obviously, you can and you do. I would say this, for instance, in fields of expertise, and there's fine lines all along. In your field of expertise, whatever it is that you do well, let us say you're sitting down planning out that thing, that activity that you do, whatever it may be, or any activity, and you're consciously playing along, and there's a cognitive process going on. That's not always clairaudience. That's you. You are using your skill, your talent, your intelligence, which God has given to us, and you're consciously taking it along to a logical conclusion. So I'm not saying every single thought you have is clairaudiently given to you. Certainly not. But again, when you have those those kind, lots of those are clairaudient. When you have that great idea out of the blue, almost always those are clairaudient. A lot of the greatest inventions that we've ever had, that inventors, as far as I'm concerned, are good clairaudients. That's what they are. They're people who are in a position to, they're obviously in that field already anyway, you see, whatever it may be, usually. And then they're just told something, often by a person who's in that exact same field but in the spirit world. Spirit doctors work with physical doctors. Spirit lawyers work with physical lawyers. Spirit haircutters work with physical. You like the plug exhale? But it's true. In whatever field of endeavor you are in, and spirit work with me and with a lot of you out there. Spirit astrologers work with astrologers. You all have spirit people that work with you. Clairaudience is the way that it comes through. Clairaudience. Now, let's get back to the original point, which is that I was told that the guides of everybody here, and this might seem strange because it would be quite an undertaking to get all of you together in one big meeting, let's say, and hash out ideas. For so many people, it'd be quite a feat. But the spirit people can do that pretty effortlessly. It's not a hard thing to do. And apparently they already have. Because what I've been tipped off to, and that's the word, and told, is that we're about to do an exercise. In, I'd say, 99% of the cases here, there's at least one thing that your guides have been trying to get across to you that you haven't gotten yet. At least one. Okay? Or more. So what I'd like to do, could we have some tape music on, please? Maybe at low volume. What I would like to do is I'd like to invite you all to just, get comfortable. This isn't quite a meditation yet. It's a contemplation, okay? There's a difference. We will do a meditation later as we end the class. But this is just a contemplative time. If you would just kind of sit comfortably, sit still, take a few breaths. And our goal is this. The goal is to try and be open to receive, to hear, to receive. Because again, I don't want you to get locked into hearing that you have to hear a voice. But to receive that which your guides may have been trying to get across to you, but you just haven't heard or gotten yet. Okay? So let's take that wonderful opportunity. You can do it with your eyes open. You can do it with your eyes closed. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever works for you, you know. So experiment. The goal is, let's sit calmly and quietly. So we're going to sit here for just a moment or two of quiet and just ask. And, oh, by the way, you should ask. You should ask, by the way, to fulfill the law of invocation. You should ask. Just kind of sit down and say, okay, guides, if it's true, you know, if there is something you've been trying to get across to me and I just haven't gotten it, I haven't heard it yet, now's the time. Please tell me. And then just sit and listen. In fact, I'm going to do it with you. So for the next moment or two, believe it or not, I will be silent. We'll listen. And we'll all listen, okay? Let's just, you know, the all-hearing ear is happening. We'll just listen. Some of you may want to relax a little bit more. I'm being told by Spirit that some are a little too tense, like waiting for something to burst in on them. Okay, so kind of relax, breathe into it. It's kind of a casual feeling of relaxation. Just being open to good thoughts that might come to you at this point. Good suggestions, whatever. I'm told that 68% of us have gotten messages at this point, so I'm going to just wait a little bit longer. We're up to 82. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Now kind of gently bring your attention, back fully into the physical world, your physical body. It can often appear just like a good idea, a suggestion, something you hadn't noticed. All those things happen like that. I am preparing to take a trip to the mainland, and in my preparations I had not gotten or realized that I'm supposed to create some alone time on that trip. I hadn't, actually. I'd kind of, I'll be with this person this day and this person, just kind of so it was just like this kind of a merry-go-round trip. And I was just told, you need to create some alone time in nature, and you haven't done that. And I realized I haven't. I have not created, in my mind, my planning of this trip, any alone time. Every minute just about was given off to this person, that, or this thing or that. So that was my message. You all got different things, I think. For any of you who may have felt that you didn't, then may I just suggest that then that gives you a nice experience to look forward to. Okay? But like I say, it's like with clairvoyance, the psychic sight. It's rarely the blinding lights and the revelations and the big, God speaking out of a cloud. It's rarely that. Rarely that. Those things happen. But usually when they do, it's like a real special occasion when those things happen, The more common thing, it's like right under your nose. It's very, very common. It's right there. And really, believe it or not, we are, all of us here, going to leave this place more clairaudient than we entered. Why? Simply because we've talked about it. Simply because we've put our attention there. Simply because As far as I can tell, most of you have consented to your own clairaudience. Some of this stuff is real basic, believe me. It's super, super simple. But it's the simplicity that trips us up. It escapes us. We don't realize that we have not made the conscious decision to be clairaudient, a lot of us here. A lot of us here, if I asked you, are you clairaudient, or anybody did? No. Right? And it should be yes. It should be an affirmation, because if you think about it, clairaudience is simply the hearing or perception of the soul. And that is going on, and that is the truth. The truth of your being is that you are clairaudient, is that you are clairvoyant. That is the truth. Now, if the personality is not in alignment or is not experiencing that truth, that gives us something to look forward to. That gives us a goal. That gives us something to say, hey, that's what this class is all about. I am often told in spirit, there are many levels of spirit. You know this, of course. There are your own personal guides and teachers. There are yet higher beings that from time to time will interact with you. Sometimes there are very great and wonderful beings who will interact with us. And I have been told by some, I consider very lofty beings, that classes like this are golden opportunities for the spirit world, believe me. The fact that we've used our free will to get together and sit here and be open to the things that we're talking about and to sincerely be here with it opens the door beautifully for this thing to happen. I mean, here we sit in classes, and a lot of you have taken classes, so you might, maybe the specialness of it might be lost on you. You might think, oh, it's just another class. There's no such thing. Every single class is an incredible golden opportunity, because every single class is a wonderful opening it's a free will saying, yes, I want enhancement. Yes, I want to grow. Yes, I want to become more. And the universe just answers you. Gives it all back. I doubt very seriously if at the end of our course, any of you here will feel that you're no more clairaudient than you were when you began. I doubt that real seriously. Real seriously. Because I really feel you're going to have enough proofs of it. As I said, this particular week, because it's the first one, kind of an orientation week as well, I didn't want to break up into groups. But every other week we will break up into groups, probably after the break. We'll break up into groups, and then I want you to interact with each other so you can see how clairaudient you are. That's part of it right there. Because I'm going to be asking that you simply sit with a partner or partners and just be open and receive what you're told about them. In effect, you will be doing psychic reading. You can call it that if you like. But you won't use tarot cards or any other tool, because you don't need it. Now, I'm not saying there's not valid tools, by the way. I'm not trying to say that. I mean, I myself, quote, broke my teeth on tarot cards, so I'm not in any way saying any of those tools are not. They're all valid and very useful in their place. But when it comes to something like clairaudience, you don't use any of those things. You just are open to what you hear. What you hear. Some of you have heard of Joan of Arc, this famous lady in France who conducted a whole army and all that. We're told she heard voices. Right? Clairaudient, right? She was clairaudient. She was definitely clairaudient. Okay, I want to move now into the last subject we're going to cover for tonight, and that subject is trance states. The word itself can frighten some people right off the bat, right? Trance, oh my God, because it kicks up all kinds of weird pictures. Most of you who know me personally know that I go into trance all the time, pretty often. Several times a day, usually. That's another case. Some of you know me too well. Moving right along. I'll overlook that. It's true. It's true that when a person has had, let's say, like a glass of wine or so, yes, really, you do go into an altered state of consciousness. It just so happens the law stipulates you shouldn't drive when you're doing that and other things like that. For the common good. We all understand that. But that's in fact what happens. You know that? When you drink any alcohol or anything like that, you in fact go into, why didn't they call them spirits? You go into... Now, believe me, please, see what you did, Ezio? Now, I'm not sitting here encouraging that everyone go home and drink wine now and try and be clairaudient, okay? Please. Let's get that very clear. Though it will work in some cases. No, I just mean that trance states are, they're common. They're very, very common. We go into trance every day. Every one of you goes into trance to some degree every single day, especially if you watch television, which I hope you don't watch too much of. If you watch TV, you are in trance. You are in trance when you're watching TV. That is what it is, I recall many times seeing my father sitting in front of the TV set, and he was in deep trance. I could call his name, nothing. You could probably walk up and put a cigarette in, and he just keep, trance. He was in trance. He still goes into trance regularly, every single day. That's a trance state, okay? It is a trance. We don't think of it as a trance, but it is. What is a trance state? By definition, it's a focused state of mind where you exclude other realities. You just choose to focus on one thing, and that's what you do. That's really what you do. There are many, many, many levels of trance. Many of you here, now we got to remember, we're all unique, we're all individuals, so some of us here have had extensive trance backgrounds, some very little. But everybody goes into some altered states. Most of you go into trance when you are taking a bath or a shower. You may not realize it, you are in trance. You think you're wide awake and all that? Not really. Most of you go into trance when you're driving a car. It's a light trance state. It is. It really is. And when it gets too deep, you rear end somebody. See, so we have to learn how to control those trance states. As a matter of fact, most of you are in trance right now. And I am entrancing you. And I know it. And now you know it. Wake up. Trance is just that. It's a state of mind. Whenever you concentrate on anything, you're within your line of endeavor, it's technically a trance state. Okay? Now tonight, as a kind of a conclusion, I'm going to again ask for some music, and I'm going to kind of gently guide you into a trance state, into a certain type of trance state. There's many types, there's many levels of trance, and there's many different purposes for going into a trance state. Have any of you here done a fire walk? You know what that is? Walk across the hot coals and all that? So a few of you have done that? Okay. When you do that, you're in trance. You'd think you'd be wide awake, right? Wide awake. Because you're walking down this thing. I have done it myself, by the way. Tony Robbins and all that. It's out in Waimanalo. He gets his coals, it's about 5-6 feet wide, wouldn't you say? And then it's about 10 feet long. And it takes about, maybe 6, 7, up to 8 steps to get past it. You can hear those coals crunching under your feet. They're red hot. How do you do it? How does a person take their shoes off? The night we did it, 300 people walked. 300 people. And mind you, I could tell just by the crowd, we weren't looking at a real metaphysical group. Particularly, right? That's what it seemed like to me. So, they weren't like high yogis or something. Not at all. The youngest was 6 years old. The oldest was 82. 300 people. Everybody walked across these hot coals. I don't think anybody didn't walk. And at the end of it, Tony Robbins called us all back into this huge barn thing, and he said, now, does anyone here have a blister? Raise your hand. And it was like right now. Not one person of the 300 had a blister, not a single blister. And I'm talking incredibly hot stuff. How was it done? Trance. The subconscious mind controls trance states. The more you know about it, the easier it is to do. Some of you in here are very adept at going into trance. And I trust that in the course of these classes, you'll come to see that. You'll realize that some of you can go into trance very easily. Some of the greatest mediums we've ever had went into trance spontaneously. They didn't, build up to it. They just went. They just went into trance, went out. Actually, that happened to me, now that I think of it. And that happened. So the reason why I am bringing up trance is, why do I think, what am I trying to do? Make mediums out of all of you? Yes, in a sense. But why in the world would I spend any time, your time, my time, talking about trance states? Because I feel that we're moving into the fourth dimension. I think that's happening on the planet, or in the universe, if you care. I really do. And therefore, as we move into this fourth dimension where everything has to do with thought, then we must start to find out about thought. how is it we have these brains and no one taught us how to use them? How is it that we have not been taught anything in consciousness? You know, in places like India, China, all these places, this is common knowledge. It's not that hard a thing. But in America, we haven't been taught these things. We just haven't. Most people, before they dive into a pool of water, go into a trance. You notice that most people, if you look at someone right before they dive in, now you would think that sounds strange, right? Because most people think in terms of trance as you're unconscious or you're sleepy. No, trance states can be, you can be wide awake and be in trance. Most people, before they're about to dive into water, they go through a subtle psychological subconscious change that gets them ready to handle that experience. I recall one time on the island of Maui, I did not have a chance to do that, and I dove into water, and I had like an incredible shock. I just did. I dove in very quickly because what was happening is I was walking on these rocks, and there was all these ants. And I'd look down and notice all these ants I'd see big clumps of them that were dead. Then I realized I was killing them. Every time I stepped, I was killing 100 ants. And I was in one of those very sensitive state of minds, and I just thought, I can't do this. So without even thinking or preparation, I just dove into the water just to, save the ants, right? And, I went into a shock. I literally did. I went into it, and I literally popped out of my body. And my body, my physical body, I could see was in the water floundering, and I was like drowning because of the shock of not preparing before I hit that, because it was ice cold. We're talking the streams, the Hana streams. Some of you know about the falls. It's very cold there. So that's what happened. I didn't go into trance before I got into the water. See what I mean? So think about it. Trance states. The value of them, I think, is the ability to focus attention on one thing. That's the value of a trance state. You can use them for many, many things. As we will get into, you'll find trance states work. I mean, when you can consciously go into trance, it's far more valuable than when you just kind of do it unconsciously. Everything, I think, is. So